I don't see a lot of people trying to write an aggressive standpoint as well as trying to touch on some of those more tender sort of feelings and moments. Most of the hard music, if you will, that I hear in town tends to be more punk, metal, sort of what we traditionally think of as hard music. I don't hear a lot of people in the electronic world, if you will, trying to do quite such aggressive or moody sorts of compositions. So in that way, maybe we stand a little bit apart.
Hey, this is Dennis Black. Welcome to the Black and Wyatt Records podcast. This week, host Mike McCarthy talks with Colin and Michelle from The Pop Ritual about their new vinyl release, The Columns, on Black and Wyatt Records. And join us at the record release party on May 3rd at 8 p.m., doors open at 7, at the historic Mollie Fontaine Lounge. And now here's We Worship Weapons from Memphis industrial psych punk band, The Pop Ritual.
Raise some blood upon the sand. here with Colin and Michelle from Pop Ritual. Thanks for coming on the Black and Wyatt Records podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
What is it about the weapons? I wanted everybody to hear a song first coming into the interview.
Yeah.
And that was years ago, right?
Yeah, the song was finished probably almost 2 years ago. We've been out playing it a little bit on some of the live shows we've done over the last 24 to 18 months, maybe. As far as the title is concerned, I mean, it's pretty evident in the lyrical content, sort of the tone and mood of the song, and I hestate most of the time to say what a song is about, but the
that's why we're here.
Yeah, I know, right? It's
well, you don't have to.
Well, I think some of it's pretty evident. You know, the song is called "We Worship Weapons," and it's largely about how I'll give a broad view. It's mostly about the worship of violence that I see in the world, and sometimes both from myself and from other people. You know, in everything from ancient cultural practices all the way to modern media, and the song's a bit of a reflection on those human tendencies.
So you don't mean weapons in the literal sense?
Not necessarily. I mean, very specifically, everything from the worshiping of physical violence all the way down to the sort of social violence that we commit against one another, oftentimes through things like overly aggressive internet debates, to
podcasts,
wild podcasts, political disagreements, all the entire gamut.
Yeah, and you used to be a cop.
This is true.
And I didn't know that until Dennis told me.
Yeah.
Did you know this, Michelle?
Never knew that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. These are the things that come out on the podcast. There'll be some more revelations later.
Yes, I didn't know this.
Okay.
Yeah, for about 5 years here in Memphis. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you were making music during that period?
Yeah, I was mostly focusing on playing Indian classical music.
As we all do.
Yeah, very popular here in Memphis, Indian classical
You
music.
guys have stumbled into one popular genre after another.
I know. We everybody keeps telling us we keep playing all the popular styles.
Well, and we can go back to the policeman thing, but if you're psych and punk and industrial, which your Bandcamp page states boldly, where does the pop come in, Michelle?
Well, I didn't come up with the name, so I would ask Colin about that one.
Okay.
It became between Colin and one of his friends kind of came up with the name.
Okay.
So I'll let him explain.
A friend who's not in the band.
Yeah, the name is a bit of it's a bit tongue in cheek, you know. To me, the pop aspect of what I'm talking about there is really just sort of a reference to the sort of the use of the popular music structure, the idea of using verse, chorus, hook, bass.
You don't have that
writing. Oh, you don't think?
I was actually trying to discern verse, chorus, but you don't really have any rules.
Yeah,
I don't. That you don't need them because of what you're doing. It's very. Is it experimental? I mean, is anything experimental anymore?
Sure.
I don't know.
I think moments are, but I guess I feel like the music is still pretty structured. There's I've done music that's very unstructured and that's very spontaneous and uses a lot of improvisation, and this is not that. While there's a lot of exploration in the sort of in say the sound design, and when there's a lot of exploration as the songs are being developed, I would say that it feels to me at least that that there are core components to the songs that are very much in alignment with at least what I take from pop music, and and maybe it's not as evident to everybody else, but for me, there's still a form and a structure to the music that to me is indicative of pop music. You know, whether we're talking about the way pop music has found its structural home in the blues or in country western music or in the 60s era bubblegum pop all the way to Britney Spears. There's a structural element that's the same. This isn't free jazz, and it's not ambient music or real music concrete or something like that, where it's there are really no rules to it. There's still some, at least I see some guidelines and some boundaries that we're working with.
So you really are what you're not.
Say again?
Well,
you're
not pop at all. But to your point, what you just said, I did. My take on it was today, like going over the 6 songs that are on the Black and Wyatt Records release that's coming out, and we'll talk about that too. Don't let me forget to talk about Mollie Fontaine's. When you do branch into something that is quote unquote traditional or verse chorus or whatever might be considered a lead guitar or whatever, it's because of what the listener knows that to be traditionally, which is genre. I would call it almost more genre than pop.
Okay.
Because pop could be an amalgamation of anything, like rock and roll is an amalgamation of things.
Absolutely.
But when you play the dissonant sort of stuff that hangs together very cinematically, and I think in more like in Columns 3 is more cinematic to my ear than 1 or 2.
Yes.
And maybe I'm completely wrong, but there's more lyrical content in 1 and 2, or am I completely wrong about that?
The lyrical, I mean, there's out of the 6 songs, they're all pretty inundated with lyrics.
Yeah.
The last song on Ingram from the Columns 3 has probably the most, it's the longest of all the songs on the release, and so just proportionately speaking, there are fewer lyrics on that song, but the rest of the songs are pretty dense lyrically.
Can we play that now?
Yeah, absolutely. This was actually the last song to be finished for the record, and it kind of came out of nowhere. It was born from a tune that I started at the very beginning of the band's time together, almost 10 years ago. But there were only pieces of it that were done, little sketches, and I revisited it just a little over, about a year and a half ago, and the song came together very quickly. It's a bit of a reflection on how you sometimes have a memory of yourself that sort of becomes crystalline, and you think of yourself in this way, and many years later or sometime later you might reflect back on that and see that you're actually not that thing at all, that you've become a completely different thing, but you have this you still have this sort of image of yourself maybe from when you were a much different and younger person.
Okay. All right, so this is Ingram by Pop Ritual. What'd you think of that, Michelle?
It was beautiful.
What did you play on that?
I do the keyboard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I play bass keyboard.
Do you also do beats or percussion, that kind of thing, or is it straight keyboards?
Just straight keyboard.
Okay. How did you come to meet this guy and play in the band with him?
Well, I
And
met,
marry him, I guess.
Yes, I met him in Columbus because I'm from Ohio.
Okay.
So that's where we met. We got married. And
Simple
then we
as
moved
that.
back to Memphis. And he had started the pop ritual already. And I was kind of the ears and the person that was there listening to everything all the time with him anyways. And then I started taking some piano lessons from his mother. And
You didn't even play piano?
no,
Jesus Christ.
no.
But you obviously had some sort of musical...
I mean, I have rhythm.
Yeah.
I have rhythm.
She's being modest.
No.
Michelle has a background in dance and has a very, very good sense of timing and rhythm and and a great understanding of music naturally. You know, she's selling herself a little bit short. Even when she started taking piano lessons from my mom, maybe almost 8 years ago, even before that, she and I had done some tinkering together and had played music together just for the love of doing so at home.
Did you meet in a club or something?
No, we met at a martial arts class.
Oh, okay.
And then he started following me around. And then he started working where I was working. And then
And then
we
what
just
happened?
became closer friends.
And then you gave him a karate chop.
We became friends. And then we just started, he was in a relationship and I was in a relationship. And then once those things fizzled out, we just started hanging out more and more with each other.
Mm-hmm. And you're
it just
talking
kind of turned into, marriage.
what it
and a
is,
kid.
yes. A ritual.
A ritual. That was 2002. So
Sometime.
we met in 2001.
Forced myself to
We got
think back
together in
that
2002.
Is that the crystalline image of yourself from 2001 or before you met Michelle?
Yeah, it's a part of it. I mean,
Yeah.
certainly a lot of those early formative years, that's some, it's, I mean, in terms of Ingram and the song, I mean, it's a little more, at least I'm trying to be a little bit more universal than just my own experience. But certainly when I think about myself within the context of that song, those are some of the times I'm thinking back to for sure.
Do you record these things to where you can actually remove any layer of track so that it could be a cinematic thing where you can control the mood or feel? If someone said, hey, I want to use that in a movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
You could do that.
Yeah, everything is multi-track, because we do all the production at home and we don't rely on anybody for our masters.
You do it all at the house.
Everything is done at home.
Okay.
And we're not relying on anybody else. Everything is archived at home. So all the multi-track sessions are a part of my long-term files that I keep, and I still go back and visit some of that stuff from time to time.
When you say you visit it, you mean you've already recorded demos of these landscape sonic assaults? I mean, I'm trying to come up with a word. Your Bandcamp page, does a really good. I actually did a voice memo of what your Bandcamp page says: textural soundscapes with deep valleys and high peaks, filled with sonic lusts, plural.
Yeah.
Lusts, plural. I've never seen lust be plural. Oral, not O-R-A-L, but A-U-R-A-L. That's another word. I don't use that often. Yeah. Fascinations and dreams of vast wasteland industrial psych punk. Do you dream of vast wastelands? Or are you just here in Memphis looking out your window?
I think that's probably more
Vast wasteland. And then I was like, well, that can't help but be cinematic. It's like the tundra or apocalyptic tundra. Is it a natural landscape or is it a post-apocalyptic thing?
Well, I think the music can fit all sorts of different scenery.
Sure.
It's interesting, when you're trying to write a description of your own music.
Right.
I personally get really bored with people trying to come up with new genre names and things like that. I find it to be kind of boring.
The hyphenated thing?
Yeah, which of course we're guilty of doing, but that it's more out of just necessity than a real belief that we follow some specific aesthetic of industrial psych punk. People need something to latch on to, and so you try and summarize that Bandcamp statement as more of a just a poetic way of trying to use words to paint an impression of what you might hear if you're thoughtful enough to take your time and listen to what we're doing.
You're listening to all this, which is sort of an orchestrated cacophony, but then when you throw a verse, some sort of traditional structure in, it does make you reflect on the fact that you are listening to something that is not what you would normally hear in Memphis, especially.
Sure.
You're the only people doing this here, unless I'm mistaken. I don't get out that much, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are other people that are working with similar technology,
like here in town.
Yeah, definitely. There.
Do you play with them?
There's some folks that we share some things in common with them, just in terms of the kind of technology that we're using, not necessarily using it the same way, and not necessarily to the same effect at all. Most of the time, if I think about our own music and I think about it in terms of mood and tone, I would say that the music can be pretty aggressive at times, but it can also be pretty tender at times and swings pretty wide. I don't see a lot of people trying to write both from maybe an assertive and an aggressive standpoint, as well as trying to touch on some of those more tender sort of feelings and moments. Most of the hard music, if you will, that I hear in town tends to be more punk, metal, sort of what we traditionally think of as hard music. I don't hear a lot of people in the electronic world, if you will, trying to do quite such aggressive or moody sorts of compositions. So in that way, maybe we stand a little bit apart, but I definitely think that there are other people, like I said, that are doing some similar things with the technology and that kind of thing. In terms of beat writing, programming, using synthesizers, mingling that with more of a rock sensibility, maybe, by inundating the music with guitars and vocals and these kinds of things.
If you wanted to play a song that represented that now, what would it be?
From another group here in town?
No, from you.
From us.
From the new record.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I think all the
the record that you're premiering on. When is it?
On May the 2nd. It drops
3rd.
May the 2nd.
Oh,
It drops May the
that's-
2nd.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Oh wait,
Sorry.
The record drops on May the 2nd.
Yeah, the release
show
show's May the
is
3rd, the
at
following
Mollie
day.
Fontaine's.
Yeah, on May 3rd.
How'd you land that gig?
Just through knowing people here in town, knowing
So
the folks that
Karen
run the
finally
spot.
got Mollie Fontaine's remodeled.
That I don't know. I hope so. Karen
far as
said
we
we
know.
were.
We,
Oh, Karen, thank you.
you better be careful. That place is haunted.
Oh yeah, that's
okay.
perfect for us.
We like that.
You'll scare the ghost away. All right, so play another song from the record that, I don't know if we want to go through the entire record. It's 6 songs,
It is.
which, again, most people might expect like 10 tracks, 12 tracks, but your tracks are longer form.
They are.
3 per side.
Yeah.
And these are tracks that are available on Bandcamp, so anybody could go listen to them before
Absolutely.
they buy the record. But we're going to talk about the package also in a second. But what would you play now, either from columns 1?
Yeah.
I don't know what we're going to talk about that as well,
Yeah.
like why the structure is that way.
Sure, absolutely.
So if we were going to play the next song you were talking about,
Yeah, we should.
The video
we should-
song?
Yeah.
Yes.
This was the first single for the columns. It's called Pandemic Dance, and there's a video out for it right now that features a good friend of ours, Ariel Guthrie, and
Arlo Guthrie?
Ariel.
Ariel Guthrie. Sorry.
Distant relative.
Right.
And she
Pop
was
Ritual doesn't live here anymore.
Yeah, she was a real champ and was a great actor in the video. But
All right, that's a video
Oh, yeah.
that you can watch on YouTube.
Spooky.
Yes.
All right. So how did that all come about? Who filmed it, and what?
Yeah.
How did you devise the plot?
Yeah, it was really Scott and I sitting down and hammering out some ideas. The root of the video came from a writing session Scott had. He brought forward a video treatment, and then we all sat down together and kind of fleshed out what the different shots would be and how we thought the scenes would connect together. And then we basically got together with a very small team of people. Our friend Dustin and Will joined us, and we got a bunch of gear together and snuck out into the middle of Overton Park in the middle of the night and shot a very illegal video.
There were probably other people there shooting videos at the same time.
I would imagine.
Yeah. So, wow, that's where Savage shot his intro for Fantastic Features. So you're in good company.
We were basically looking for dark forest,
Right.
anything that we could use to disguise the urban landscape and get away from the
Right.
urban environment. The streets
Which
were more
plays
urban.
against maybe the preconceived notions of the band.
Sure. Well, or at least maybe some of the imagery that someone might commonly associate with what they think of as urbanly driven music, maybe.
What do you mean?
Street music, right? Music from the streets, music that reflects the sort of landscapes that you're set in, and this sort of thing, the sort of mechanized nature of electronic, quote unquote, industrial music, if you will. Juxtaposing that with something that's a little more organic to us feels more interesting than maybe using the sort of pavement, asphalt, urban decay sort of look that people might normally expect.
And yet framed at night, which might fit the music.
Yeah, definitely.
Or the tone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah, I think
Can I make a comment?
Please.
Yeah. I love that video. And another thing that music, beyond the sort of, threatening, is it reminds me a little bit of H.P. Lovecraft, and you get the sense of some dark, foreboding force or creature that's just sort of underneath a layer of your reality is, but it's there threatening to burst through. Yeah, and you don't know how to deal with it.
I think that's a very good impression of the tune. That's very much what we're sort of going for there. This sense of dread and anxiety and impending doom. And
the other thing, it has all of those emotions, which one might think are not that pleasant to have. Yeah. But it's a very compelling song.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
And I want to go back and listen to it again or watch the video again.
Yeah. That's
so
great.
That's kind of difficult to achieve, is to arouse those seemingly divergent.
Not in Overton Park, it isn't.
Well, anyway,
it's possible at Overton Park.
Congratulations on that, because I think that is a great video and a great song.
That. Yeah, well, we really owe Scott a lot of credit on that. Like, I just want to.
He does production
come
work.
Roll back to him for a second on that. In terms of the video, he really helped us capture that. He understood the assignment, as the kids say, and he did all the editing on the video, which was great. And I think he put together something that we had not quite achieved yet. It both captured, I think, that sense of impending doom that is present in the song, but at the same time, he was able to kind of breathe a little bit of new and different life into it. The song has its roots in some other meaning, but the video gives it a whole new context, and I really enjoy it too. I think it's the coolest thing we've done so far in terms of video work.
Where the hell is Scott from?
Scott's from Memphis. He's the only native-born Memphian.
That's why he's not here today.
Yeah.
Exactly. Just like a native-born Memphian. Never showing up for his own gigs.
Scott, the guitar player.
Yeah, Scott's our guitar player.
Where is Scott, by the way, right
He's
now?
in Nashville right now.
Ooh, that's even worse.
Yeah, well.
If you can't be here, don't be in Nashville.
Depends on who you ask. A lot of people
Well, that's where the work is, I guess.
Yes.
Well, maybe we should all go to Nashville as soon as this podcast is over.
Make some money.
Yeah.
Does he play in any other, like, is he playing in a band in Nashville and not telling you?
It could be.
Okay, could be.
He could be. He could be. I wouldn't begrudge him it. No, Scott's such a talented guy. He should be playing music with anyone and everyone he can.
He's quite the axe slinger.
He is.
You know,
Yes.
all you guys look great on stage.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Or actually on the
That's awesome.
concrete floor, because I think that's pretty much, I've never seen you literally on a
On a
stage.
Yeah.
Interesting,
Well,
okay.
we like being on the floor.
You're with the people.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
it's just,
flexible.
You're,
play wherever.
You're a dancer, but you're rooted to the keyboards.
There it is.
You
There
you
cannot
go.
do your thing.
Yes.
Oh my God. Just trying to figure out, when Michelle exactly started taking the piano lessons, but we'll figure it out. I want a date, a year.
I could not give you
We'll
that.
get my mom on the phone.
That would be a
I don't know
caller.
if she would remember. either.
Sometimes people do call in and it gets kind of
that's
ugly.
Oh well, maybe we should avoid that.
Nah.
Well, your mom would
Nancy's
be
very
your
nice.
mom would be calling in from where?
Kentucky, my little hometown.
You guys keep moving around on me. Ohio, Kentucky, and there's some Chicago business happening.
Yeah. We've spent some time in Chicago. No one's from there though.
Okay.
We've done some shows there. So.
And the other thing I found very intriguing was your, and I read this in your one sheet,
Yeah.
I have to admit, but the concept of the three columns,
Yeah.
sort of propping up civilization as we perceive it,
Right.
but actually over time it's kind of deteriorating and rotting,
Yeah.
and we're not fully aware of it. I think we know there is something bad going on,
Yeah.
and it's kind of threatening, but you can't quite put your finger on it.
Yeah.
But in your music, really, some of your music really kind of gets that emotion, and I take it that's where the idea for the columns came. Or do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah. I mean when we were titling the record and we were thinking about what the bigger themes were. The songs were written before the album was titled, and sometimes when you've at least in the way that we work, sometimes we'll have working titles for both songs and or record ideas. Sometimes I mean in my phone I have notes of potential song titles and ideas for records and things like that. Sometimes things start with the title, but oftentimes they don't. They'll have working titles for a long time until the right thing kind of reveals itself. And as Scott and I were sitting down and having discussions about what we thought the bigger themes of the album were, it had actually gone through some changes. We'd had a couple different titles in place, but Scott started reading back through some of the lyrics as he likes to do, and as he was calling through some of the lyrics, there was a line that stood out to him. That comes from the song "Tear Down Your Temples," and in that song we're referring to the columns, and in that song very specifically we're talking about the columns of society and those social structures, and how oftentimes we think of the time that we're living in as being the best time period that humanity has ever experienced, but yet there's so much imbalance in the world, and as you so aptly stated, sometimes you know that there's something wrong, but you can't quite put your finger on it, and you can see how as certain things slip through the cracks, certain people seem to be forgotten and lost, and certain elements of our larger infrastructure start to collapse and decay, and there's a lot that gets lost along the way in this pursuit of progress and a better life for all.
Well, yeah, I think that's a really important concept, and I think I've never really heard anyone express it musically as well as you guys do, and make it and do it very effectively.
Thank you.
Because you're thinking that concept of it's just kind of under the surface, but things are going wrong, and I guess you could express that lyrically, but to also be able to express that musically.
Yeah.
To me, it's difficult to do, and it's just amazing you guys can do that.
Well, there's something about anxiety that personally makes me thrive. I don't know what it is, but there's something about music, especially that hits my anxiety button a little bit, that gets my focus really turned on, and that energy can excite me a lot of times, and often becomes the sort of the drive behind feeling like I have anything to say at all.
Well, let's play it. This is "Tear Down Your Temples" by the Pop Ritual. Do you think that you put so much thought into something because the abstract nature of the song demands that maybe people need to understand what it is you're getting at? Although people need to listen to it and come up with their own conclusions.
Yeah, that's more. I mean, for me, I don't. I guess I don't really think of it as being quite that abstract. It's just
don't.
Yeah, I don't. For me, when I'm writing this stuff, it's almost always music first and then lyrics second. Which means that that's one of the reasons why the songs most of the time get working titles.
Are the lyrics on Bandcamp?
Well, the lyrics are printed inside the new album on a beautiful lyric sheet that's included with the record.
By Black and Wyatt Records.
By Black and Wyatt Records.
Which you're going to unveil on
May the
3rd.
May the 3rd, yeah.
Yes, that's the show.
The release show.
So is it literally going to be out in record stores on the 2nd?
I don't know that it'll have a shelf date on May the 2nd, but it'll be available it should be available for order on May the 2nd for sure.
And that's on the Bandcamp page as well?
Without a doubt. And I think also through the Black and Wyatt website as well.
Okay, cool. Is that, Dennis, you back that up?
And our distributor, Selecta Hits, will also have it.
Excellent.
And we'll be putting it in select record stores too for commercial.
It's almost as if it were the 70s.
It's coming back.
Amazing. I love
But
it.
and I was commenting earlier, you've had this done for some time. You're way ahead of the game. It's like you're totally on top of everything.
Well, we're lucky in that way because it's normally not that way for us. We're normally running from behind. So to have so much lead time on this is helpful.
So have you put out a record before? Vinyl record?
No, not a proper vinyl release. We've manufactured to CD and to cassette and that kind of thing, and of course lots of digital releases. But
so, what are the titles of your previous releases?
Yeah, the first album we did is called Perende Ac Cadaver, and then our second release is called It Sheds Again.
Didn't you have a demo single out?
We did,
first?
Absolutely, yeah. The first collection of demos that included 3 demos from Perende Ac Cadaver, and then two songs that we've not released since was called Weak Species, and that was basically a collection of songs we were doing at the time, right around 2015. We basically made that in order to take it on tour with us so that we would have something to leave in people's hands.
And when you've toured, where have you been?
Mostly east of the Mississippi, so Nashville, Louisville, Chicago, Columbus, Pittsburgh.
You stay at Michelle's mother's house?
Yeah, no, we've never stayed at
we will,
Michelle's
though.
parents' place. We would. Yeah. New York.
Do you
New
find
Orleans.
the grittier places have more acceptance or more like intellectual certitude to what you're doing, or because I can see you blowing through Kentucky with this? That's got to be fun. It's more challenging.
You would think, but sometimes some of the smaller towns have you get some of the cooler reactions because maybe it's something the kids are not exposed to as much.
But how do they know you're there? That's the other question.
Yeah, that's tough. That's always tough. Oftentimes, it's you trying to network with the right kind of venue that understands what you're doing, and they're going to try and place you on either on a night that they believe would be good for you, or at least try to pair you up with some locals that they feel like are going to help draw some people of interest to your show. You're
going to tour this album, I presume?
We are, going back out on the road in June, early mid-June. I can't really give you dates yet, but that's in the works right now.
Well, would Selecta Hit, back in the old days, the label maybe would be in touch with radio stations, or is that even a thing anymore?
That I don't know. We haven't personally. We've not done a lot of radio station contact ourselves.
Well, we have a webmaster who runs the web page, and she does do a bit of social media, posting and that kind of thing. So we'll probably connect it up with that.
Yeah.
I guess the old idea of going around giving promotional copies to radio stations, I used to work at a radio station when I was in high school and college, and I'd get all the promo copies.
Yeah.
Anything they didn't like, which was mostly the good stuff.
Yeah, you took them with you.
They'd give me the promo copies. That seems to not be the same anymore with all the computerized programming and you know.
It's progress,
Yeah.
Dennis.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess so. But
Yeah, most of the places that we contact, venues or promoters, you know, most of the time they want a digital one sheet and and links. You know, links to a Bandcamp page, links to a Spotify, links to a SoundCloud, something like that. You know,
It's enough just to make the music,
Sure.
but then you've got to turn around and do all the other
legwork.
things.
Yeah.
It's like making a film. You've got to also go out and promote it and or whatever you're doing, and it's like it's exhausting.
Yeah, I mean, for us, this part of the process is fun. You know, we have day jobs, right? So
You have a night job, night shift.
You know, so when we have an opportunity to get out and talk about the music or share a little bit about our story and the experience of putting this together, for us, that's still very exciting. You know, it's a fun, even though it requires work and it's energy. You know, it's our labor of love. It's our passion. So, you know, it doesn't feel like work as much. You know, getting out on the road still feels like work, but fun work.
All that other stuff that you've done, that stuff was done and finished before the columns work was begun.
Yes, absolutely.
Did you plan it on purpose to be a set of songs, 3 sets of songs?
Yes.
As if it were a single, literally a physical single.
Yeah, that was the intention. There was an intention at one time to potentially release this as 3 7-inches and to collect them together. That had been an idea that we had kicked around early before we had ever spoken with Black and Wyatt, and we knew that we wanted to try to do this on vinyl. We all have a love for physical media, especially vinyl records. I'm a bit of a junkie myself.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but
You guys have a big record collection?
it's fair, you know, under 1,000 pieces, you know,
Right.
It's a fair collection,
Right.
You know, but I love it. It's all music that I actively listen to. Nothing sitting in my collection that's just taking up space on a shelf.
Where do you have the time to listen and interact and write and work and sleep and
That's a challenge.
it is for every creative soul. It's
For sure. Yeah, not enough hours in the day. You know, I don't.
Or maybe you don't sleep that much.
There are many weeks where we don't sleep that much, but you know, you just squeeze things in wherever you can. I still actively listen to records. So oftentimes I'm getting home from work in the mornings at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning and putting on headphones and laying down with the record on the couch is not unusual instead of turning on the TV.
Yeah.
No, not to say that I don't watch plenty of TV, but I still just choose to spend time either listening to music or actively engaged in making it.
So you come up with something which is, what would you call it? It's not you're not coming up with a guitar riff, or you're not coming up with a melody per se, right? You're coming up with a mood or an ambience or something.
I mean, that's more of what I'm looking for. I'm you know, I spend most of the songs are created in the studio. The songs really go from being a demo at some point, but that very same demo that we're working from or stitching the initial ideas together on, that becomes the song. So there's never a separate demo that exists independently of the finished song.
You replace some elements from the demo with exact, better produced elements?
Exactly, yeah. So because everything is done inside the box on the computer, it's all being recorded on the computer, there's never this process of having a demo that I sort of finish to the best of my ability and then take it to someone and say, hey guys, look, this is the song.
Right.
Let's go back now and refine this. Instead, it is from that very same file that we're constantly refining and working on and either stripping things away or building back into in order to complete the work.
Yeah. You know that he's in there fiddling around.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
The whole household knows it.
Yeah.
And you come in, maybe you've planned to practice, or it's not even a practice. Do you even practice? You just go in and you...
We do practice, but
okay.
But during this phase, you have so many little demos of music. Sometimes we pull from them something that's older. He just makes something that's he's inspired by, and then he'll like, hey, come check this out, and then I'll sit down with them for an hour or two, and then will listen to it, and I can give some feedback of what I think or what.
I was going to say, does that suit your melodic taste, or do you come up with something counter to maybe sometimes what he's proposing?
It is my melodic taste. I mean, usually, there's things that we've been talking about, certain ideas of films or socially what's going on, and those things we're pretty connected on the same idea with those kinds of things.
And that, of course, has changed over 12 years, the life of the band. I mean, the evolution of how you play, how does that work?
Colin does most of the writing, and then I kind of listen and give some feedback to things that are going on, and whether something could change or something be louder, or if it's just too muddy, or if it's overlapping in the wrong way, or a different sound or a different tone. Then I'll give my feedback, what I think.
Michelle's always been sort of my trusted confidant behind the scenes, even before she was physically playing with us. Always being invited into the room, always having an open door policy in that way, where I wanted her thoughts and comments on what was going on. But for me, especially early in the process with most things are not, there's nothing sacred to me. So for someone to have an idea that they want to put forward, or criticism or opinion about how something is sounding, tends not to offend me, because it's also easy to keep in place and to still try these various ideas with the way that you're able to edit on a computer these days. It's just there's no reason not to try the different ideas, and sometimes people come up with better ideas than what I had. So that's a great thing about having partners, for sure.
Is there an analog component to this, or is it all direct into a unit?
Yeah, I mean, everything is recorded direct into a unit. Of course, there are analog instruments, analog synthesizers and drum machines and so forth, but at some stage everything is being coalesced together inside the computer, for sure. Do
you write towards a theme for the overall, like the 6 songs? I mean, I know it all suits the columns.
Right. Well, I think it's almost like someone writing a story, where you may have the sort of overarching themes of the story that you want to write. Maybe you have some of the characters in mind that you want to create, and you understand that they need to get from point A to point B, but you're not sure of everything that happens in between, right? So then you start that process of filling out what that is. And songwriting and album creation for me is very much the same way. So most of the time, for instance, for the columns, even though there are only 6 songs that appear on it, we demoed together 12 songs that were a potential consideration. And
you could have had a double album.
And we kind of talked about that, whether or not the ideas were strong enough to support that many songs. But upon reflection, Scott and I and Michelle, we all agreed that in the end that these 6 songs they told the story that they were supposed to tell, and they did it efficiently. And it's not to say that the other songs that were considered for the album aren't good, or that they're not interesting, or they may show up in other places eventually. But the story started to take shape more and more and more as we edited it down and as we got the chapters in place.
I think that any fan of your work, or new fans of your work, like initially, like me coming into it and listening to this stuff, I don't necessarily know there's a story, as in you're talking about a cohesive whole, or like 3 acts. I mean,
it's not a Willie Nelson song, right? It's not a Ramblin' Man record.
No, to me it's an emotional soundscape, and of course it's sequenced in a certain way,
right? So
that's very purposeful.
Absolutely.
So, and I know that now, and today I wasn't listening to it in album order.
Sequence, right? Sure.
So this is good for me to know. It's good for the listener to know, because you're not just listening to this in some sort of way of like, it's an emotional, like I said earlier, an orchestrated like cacophony of things that are coming at you. And to me, I don't know that I know a lot about these genres that you're, that maybe you
tinkering with,
that you're mashing together, and then coming up with your own original taste and personal lives and stories and all that. I mean, to me, when I was last listening to what might be considered industrial or industrial noise, as it was called in the 80s, was kind of homegrown as well. There was a band called Isolation that would play at punk shows. It was Mike Humphreys and Mike Jackson, and they would just beat the shit out of things. And we're like, we would applaud.
The old days.
But there was no story to that.
Sure.
Or, maybe there was on a meta level.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think that there's always the story that the listener is bringing in with them, right? And that's actually more of what that's one of the reasons why I don't really like talking about what songs are about.
That's exactly right.
I'll talk, I don't mind sharing the themes behind them.
Yeah.
Like maybe where my head was and that kind of thing. But the meaning of songs, in my opinion, just like the meaning of any great art, is determined by the listener or the viewer, the person experiencing it. I don't really think the author gets to dictate meaning. That's the personal story that each person brings to it, and that's part of what excites me.
And you've listened to Husker Du.
Sure.
And so Husker Du gives you this blast.
Yeah.
But then the song is called Some Girl's Name.
Yeah, sure.
Or it's about New Day Rising, or it's something. And it clears your eardrums out.
Yeah.
And it's about a new day that's rising.
Yeah.
Where with you guys, I'm looking at a title like The Fix, like we haven't played The Fix yet.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's a drug reference, but I have
It's not.
The Fix. I know, because I know that would be too simple. That's too simple. That's too easy. The Fix can be anything. It can be like your morning coffee or your morning whatever.
Yeah. It's someone who gets something done for you.
Hello. So
well, to me, the mark of many great songs is that there can be multiple interpretations depending on the listener.
Without a doubt.
And yet they can be very emotional, very effective, even if they're not what you thought about when you wrote the song.
Yeah. But when you title it, though, that's when you step onto the ledge, because now, like, you're giving the listener some indication of what you thought it was,
you're
like
sort of crystallizing
like classical music or whatever. I mean, sometimes just goes by letters, numbers.
Sure.
The composer did not even want to
But that shouldn't get in your way, though, when you hear the song.
No, it doesn't. I'm just saying it begins a flavor of an experience which we attribute to pop music.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah. I mean, you're guiding your audience a little bit, leaving them little breadcrumbs. I mean, there's no doubt that, if someone's able to get in and decode the meaning of one of my tunes, I'll
kill them.
I'll applaud them. I'll applaud them, because I can't imagine someone being interested enough to take that kind of time to sort of try and untangle this web that's going on in my own mind. But the songs,
Michelle could back that up.
But the songs definitely have. They were written within a certain spirit. And there was a certain headspace that I'm in whenever I'm constructing those lyrics and writing those lyrics. But again, just as Dennis pointed out, the real meaning is it's up to the listener. For me, many of the songs that I love, their meanings have evolved for me over the years. Certain songs don't mean the same thing to me now.
With or without a lyric sheet.
With or without a lyric sheet. Yeah.
Well, and that was one of the great things about Sgt. Pepper's was that it had a lyric sheet on the back cover, whereas before maybe the identity or the ideal of record companies or even artists was, let's not let the viewer be more let's let them escape traditional or literal meanings.
Right.
But you did say the lyric sheet was
it's included.
It's included.
Yeah, and even for
but
the
I would
last
like
album,
to know what you're saying.
Sure. Yeah. I would like people to know what I'm saying. That's one of the reasons to include the lyric sheet.
And in a few years, you would like to know what you're saying.
For sure.
Once I start forgetting.
Yeah.
And even for the last record on It Sheds Again, Scott did a series of lyric videos to make sure that the lyrics were published and available for people.
Scott, who's in Nashville tonight.
Scott, who is in Nashville tonight. Yeah.
He just didn't want to toot his own horn.
I think that's what it is.
Is that what it is? Or is Scott trying to do should we just interview him by himself?
Yeah, why not? We should. I mean,
he's on the spot.
Solo artist.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he's a really creative and interesting person. He'd be He'd definitely be a great guy to just talk to and have in the hot seat.
Lisa and I first saw you guys at Yvonne Bobo's Off the Walls. And again, you're like right floor level, right in everybody's face. You're a tall guy. You're you can't help but be somewhat imposing, just in the way you're coming across, which is classic frontman.
Yeah.
And that's good. I think we need more frontman.
I stepped away from playing modern music for a long time. I think we mentioned earlier, I was playing Indian classical music.
Okay, what the hell do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I play classical sitar, North Indian sitar. If listeners are unaware of what that instrument is.
So that does not go into pop ritual at all?
Not really, no.
Okay.
It's
disguised.
For me, I haven't found a good way to marry the instrument into modern music. There's a lot of modern pop music that's done it,
So it's apropos for me to bring up Sgt. Pepper's.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love the Beatles, and to truth be told, the Beatles is probably the first place that I ever recognized the sitar, or the first place that I can go back to in my little memories of music, where I'm like, oh yeah, that's where it was. That's where that sound came from. I spent about 7 years getting away from any kind of modern music and focused solely on Indian classical music, and that was something that I love and I still practice and do, but mostly just on my own.
I think George Harrison was exposed to sitar during a break on the filming of Help.
Yeah.
In a restaurant scene.
That sounds correct, yeah.
I need to watch Help again. Okay, so can we listen to the fix and talk about that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Hey, you're looking for a new job. I think you got what you can do. It shouldn't be that involved. Don't take it personal. And everything gets merciful. Never gets rehearsal. Everything we do is purposeful. Come on, let's set it up. Don't you think you've had enough?
I'm going to have more people on than can possibly be put out or released by Black and Wyatt.
Sure.
And so as of late, these guys aren't these guys aren't putting out that much stuff.
Right.
So it's really cool that I get to talk to somebody who's actually on the label.
Yeah.
But
We're excited to be here.
But as of late, I've talked to a lot of people who aren't on the label, but they've had Memphis history and old recordings and things, and it's fun, and it's great to do that, like with Selvage and Tripp and Stivers and other folks.
Ross Johnson.
Tim Prudhomme. And it's cool to do that because they can then introduce songs, like play lots of stuff that there is no record for Black and Wyatt to produce or to exhibit.
To exhibit, right.
But in your case, we do have that.
Yeah.
Love that.
So the fix is not about the fix, I have a feeling.
Yeah, maybe it is.
Maybe
you know,
Keep you guessing.
you know, it
I don't want to know.
definitely-
I don't want to know.
Yeah, well, you know, it's I like things that keep me guessing. You know, it just really speaks to more of my simply. It just speaks to more of my own interest. I like things oftentimes that are a little bit of a mystery, that don't necessarily I like things that leave breadcrumbs and don't necessarily allow me to see the full picture, where I have to fill in the gaps.
You don't even know yourself?
In some instances, I would say, I'm trusting my own instincts to guide me through the process, and to get to a place where I'm making something that emotionally stimulates me. And I know personally, I feel like if I can get it to that place to where I'm really being emotionally stimulated, then I feel like it has a chance to do that for other people.
But are you disguising emotions?
Not intentionally. I'm trying to amplify them.
I think modern songwriting or Western songwriting does intentionally disguise emotions, or the best songs. I mean, now, the more literal something is, to me, the more horrible it is.
Oh, I see what you mean.
I see.
Like if you if you play a song on a jukebox in the 70s, it's a bunch of, white soul or country or R&B, and they're using metaphor, which maybe metaphor disguises emotions.
Okay.
But you could go even deeper in disguising emotions, because you have to psychologically, therapeutically get something out of your system.
Yeah.
But we don't need to know what that is.
Yeah, I think that you're really dialing in on it there, and at least for me, and so maybe in that way, maybe I am disguising some emotions in that regard.
But with lyrics, you mean?
Yeah, right. Because there are things that I feel like I want to say that it's easier to say it in this form.
And bury it in the mix.
Well, it's not that I'm afraid for anybody to listen to the lyrics or to hear them clearly for what they are.
But that's classic, like garage rock. You bury the vocal. The vocal is no more important than the audio.
That's more
the music.
Yeah, right. That's more that's more the angle I feel like I'm coming from.
Yeah.
That's why for me, it's music first, lyrics come afterwards, because the lyrics really wind up being inspired by the mood of the music. It helps to take me to that place where I can get in the right headspace. And I'm generally not the person that is sitting down and writing journal entries or writing poems that I am thinking are going to become songs down the line. It's not that I don't do that. I do write some journal entries. I do write some poetry, if you will, I guess. But I'm not really doing that with the intention of turning those things into songs or trying to create some archive to pull from.
You're going to need the lyric sheet to know what this guy's talking about.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
That's
And even
probably
then,
not true.
I have a feeling that the psych industrial punk, it's just going to be, it's going to go over most people's heads. So cancel all AM radio. Do we still have AM radio?
We have AM radio.
Do we have FM?
Yes.
It exists.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
I don't know that I'd be proud to be on it.
We're going to get you guys on Sirius.
Hey,
Sirius.
I would love to hear.
Too bad George Klein is dead. We could do wonders here, but I don't know.
Does college radio still exist?
Yes,
there's that term again. College radio. So went to the Subteens record release at Memphis Listening Lab.
All right.
And college radio was brought up, and I'm like, college radio? That's almost like steam-powered train.
When I was a student back then it was Memphis State. WTGR was the college station.
What was it?
WTGR for Tiger.
No.
And I worked on the college station, and it was powered just enough maybe to get not even into Midtown or East Memphis, was, but it got the dorms okay, so the girls listened. Call in, requests. But but it was a lot of fun, and you could play what you wanted to play, very free format.
Well, that went away, didn't it?
Yeah.
Play what you want to play.
Yeah, but I miss it. I think it's
totally.
It had its it had its positive features.
Well, sure.
Oh yeah.
FM radio here in Memphis back when I was a teenager and FM 100 and all of that. John Scott, those guys were just a lot of fun to listen to because they would play what they wanted and they knew what to play.
Dennis is talking about the early 70s.
Oh yeah.
Not that long ago.
Well, no, I'm just saying these guys weren't even born yet.
This one was.
Okay. Well, when did y'all move to Memphis?
Well, I grew up around here, so I lived here. I came here in 1985, and then
I
moved
as a kid,
as a child. Yeah, I was 5. I was born in 80, so I came here in 85 with my parents, and we'd come over from Arkansas, even though that's not where we're from. And
I knew there was some Arkansas thing going on here. I knew it.
Yeah, I lived in Pocahontas, if you know where that is. But we came over here in 85, and I stayed here until basically until 2001, and then I moved to Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah. I always think of Ohio as being a pretty funky place. It's almost like the Mississippi of the Midwest.
Yeah.
You know, and then Ohio winds up with the Rock and Roll Museum.
Right.
We didn't have our act together.
Yeah, this is true.
Yeah.
This is true. Yeah, I guess the debate about that, right, was Cleveland's claim on that was that the first radio DJ in the country to use the term rock and roll.
Alan Freed?
Yeah, was out of Cleveland, right? Is that wrong? Did I get that wrong?
I don't believe it.
Yeah, maybe that's wrong.
I believe in Dewey Phillips.
Okay.
I believe in Dewey Phillips like I believe in Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Maybe more so.
Yeah.
To be honest with you. You said you moved away in 2001?
Yeah, I moved away in 2001.
But were you steeped in Memphis musical traditions at that point?
Not really. I mean,
you weren't playing in clubs or anything.
Yeah, no, yeah, okay, yeah. I was playing around here at that time.
Who were you with?
Oh boy.
Oh God.
Yeah. So truly no one to know.
Right.
There's no recorded work from that time period for me. I was just cutting my teeth in small bands that were trying to. Yeah. Not that this band.
But you were 20.
Band, but,
you were 21.
Yeah. At that time, before I left, I did not have a group of my own that I was working in. I had not had a group together since high school.
Where'd you go to high school?
I went to Houston High School. Played in a band at that time called The Process. That was my first attempt at doing something that is maybe in this genre, that aesthetically is similar. After post high school, I kind of got disinterested in any kind of what I would call pop music, and started focusing on more sound design, ambient compositions.
And this was before technology had really provided everything.
Yeah, this was, so everything was being done on, samplers and like hardware samplers and sequencers, and then an amalgam of guitar pedals and using guitars in kind of unconventional ways and doing a lot of overdubs with 4 tracks and using multiple 4 tracks synced up. Old Marantz 4 tracks.
And you don't have those recordings?
I have some of those recordings. But
this period, in any case, always interests me because to me it's like a series of accidents and stupid mistakes and dumb luck, and that makes you wind up making the decisions that you make. And but just to come from Houston High School and wind up where you guys are now and doing the sounds that you're doing, that's not anything that anyone would predict. So you've had life experiences, of course, and I keep going back to this, but the British invasion bands and all that, they had no life experiences per se. They just spit out stuff in their early 20s that set standards for what we rail against now.
A lot of what those guys were doing too was playing the music of the people that they admired, and that they
American
loved.
music.
Yeah, American music. Little Richard and Elvis Presley and Carl Perkins and
but
all
you
these
didn't really
kinds of music.
But that wasn't important to you many decades later.
I mean, yes and no. That music has always been important to me, and I've always had a real love for classic American music, and then eventually, all the British invasion, rock and roll, psych rock stuff, into the 60s German
psych rock. You mean like 13th Floor Elevators?
Yeah, love 13th Floor Elevators,
but you had to find this stuff
like
on
the
your
Standells, and,
right.
all that kind of stuff.
You had to find this on your own, though.
Yeah, most of that came from journeying on my own, but also, Memphis radio in the 80s and early 90s was still pretty cool. You could still hear a lot of old classic stuff like that you weren't hearing in the rest of the country on radio stations, pretty regularly around here. So there was some education in all of that I didn't even realize was going on with me. I was around it and I was hearing it, and it sort of wove its way into my musical DNA, if you will. But that wasn't really what stood out to me. The things that got me excited about music and that got me thinking as a child, like, oh, I want to do this. I want to do music. I can do this. That didn't really happen for me until, the early 90s. And I was really starting to listen to the music that was being made for my generation.
But you're still incredibly young at that point.
Yeah. Oh, very young. Yeah, very young. I mean, I had an older brother that played a big role in this, inheriting what he was listening to. And
how old?
Only 3 years older, but there was enough of a gap there that he has older friends, and so they're introducing him to stuff. Yeah. So when he's 14, 15, and I'm 11, 12 years old, he's, feeding me all the... I mean, I can name all the bands and stuff, of course, but I don't know that that's important. But he's feeding me all the stuff that would...
Well, sure. What are some of the bands?
Yeah, so, the big ones for me from that time period that my brother, kind of spoon-fed me were Ministry and Skinny Puppy and 9 Inch Nails and eventually bands like Coil and Throbbing Gristle. And then I go back and find things like Cabaret Voltaire and go back a little further and find Kraftwerk, and that stuff begins to lay the basis for this real interest in electronics. It was the electronics that really spoke to me as a kid, and that got me excited.
Where did the punk come in?
Yeah, I mean, that had more, that came from loving just rock and roll. I mean, for me, punk rock is really just doing rock and roll on your own without any money. It's a broke rock and roll, doing their best to get it out.
So you were internalizing punk not in a historic sense, but in a personal sense.
Yeah, more of a personal sense, and I didn't really love the quote unquote punk music of the 90s. A lot of that got quite boring to me. Well, there's stuff that broke through in the mainstream that just was not my interest. I was already interested in things that were, like for me, Suicide is a punk band.
Oh,
That's punk rock, right?
Yeah.
It's punk rock with drum machines.
But how you find Suicide, that's a whole other story.
Yeah, well, I mean, that...
In a pre-internet world.
Sure, right. I mean, that just came from reading magazines, from, reading like Mojo and hearing what Trent Reznor is listening to, and then going back and trying to find out what he's listening. You know what I'm saying? And going like, oh, well, I like this guy, and he's saying that this music was important to him, and then going back and finding those things. And of course, at that time, it was hard to find any of that stuff, because it's not like Suicide was available at your local record store. Well,
the thing I love about Mojo magazine was they were actually selling you a magazine that had an old rock star on the cover, and you were supposed to rise to the occasion and buy the $10 magazine just so you could find out about the Kinks on the cover, or who is this?
Sure.
I mean, if you're 40, 50, you know who they are, but that's taking a big gamble. Yeah. It's almost like Cream magazine. Whenever they'd go out on a limb and put Iggy Pop on the cover, it's like, okay, I'm sure the sales are going to dip here
a little bit,
because you're not putting Van Halen on the cover or whatever. What about you, Michelle? The fascinating period of you realizing you're maybe not into what everybody else is into.
I grew up around Madonna and Guns N' Roses and glam rock and then glam punk, and then it just started evolving, so probably a little bit older than Colin was, I think, when I started getting into Ministry and Skinny Puppy and that kind of stuff.
They're just sort of
16.
more off the beaten path kinds of things.
Yeah.
Yet you couldn't hear. Well, maybe you could hear it on the radio. I guess. Well, you could hear Trent Reznor.
I mean, you get things from friends.
Yeah, there's some of those things that break through into the mainstream, but a lot of stuff that we just don't hear openly.
Do you think about genres or subgenres or even crazy jazz, or is anything that you haven't even gotten into yet or understood yet that's still waiting for you?
I think I'm past judging music. I think when you're younger, I think that's a mindset because you want to create an image for yourself. But I think the older you get, I think the more understanding and you can see correlations between the different kinds of music, and you kind of understand wait, there's good music everywhere. If it's good, it's going to be good. I'm not the biggest fan of modern pop country, but I do like country.
Somebody is. Listening to 70s albums that I never listened to as a kid because I was more into visual art.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So going back and someone will say, you never listened to that? Everybody was listening to that.
Right.
But I wasn't. And
right.
So just going back into the past, there's so much.
Yeah, it's rich.
Even in
there's so much.
Memphis had, I think Jim Cole told me this once, Memphis has had more record labels than any other city on earth.
Wow.
And of course it's 300 and some odd record labels. I have to get Jim Cole on here to verify these things. So even if you're only listening to music, even in your own city, so I'm finding that I will never be able to fully explore everything that I am eventually dropping my. It's not even dropping your guard down. It's you're becoming capable of understanding things. Sure, I listened to Sun Ra when once or twice when I was in my 20s, but okay, I listened to it, So now I'm going to. But then I was also more into Black Flag. Yeah. But then, like you said, you see the connections, maybe?
Yeah, you can kind of understand, this kind of sounds like this, but this is a complete different genre.
So I guess what I'm saying is, do all roads lead back to jazz?
Well, Sun Ra does make a special appearance on the columns.
Oh, he does.
Really?
Yes.
That wouldn't be the next song we're about to play, would it? Wouldn't that be a segue?
It might be.
What, It Comes Back?
It does come back.
this feeling that the very fact is past, present, and future. But my music actually is reaching out, not being a part of the past, out of the present, out of the future, but rather what I call an altered destiny, because I'm dealing with equations. And most people feel that the planet is doomed anyway.
There's a segment within It Comes Back that actually contains a segment from an interview that Sun Ra did with a French interviewer sometime in the 70s that it spoke very much. Some of the things that he said just spoke to me, and I felt like it was important to include his spirit in that song. You know.
Complete disclaimer, I had no knowledge previously when I referenced Sun Ra.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of snuck in, it's hidden in, you know, but it just goes to show that, you know, there's we like everything. you know, we really do. When Michelle was saying that she's sort of past this point where she's making a lot of criticisms about music and she can take joy in everything, I really relate to that, because, you know, we like everything, you know.
Well, you don't like everything.
No. We don't discriminate style, I guess.
Right.
There's nothing stylistically that turns us off.
I think I don't like things that are overproduced
Sure.
for genre, for mass consumption.
Okay.
Oh, right.
But there's exceptions in the
Right.
60s and 70s
Right.
because corporations had not completely figured everything out.
Sure. Kind of gotten their fingers in everyone's pie.
Right.
There are things that I don't like, but I can only tell you what I don't like when I hear it. It's
Like this podcast when it comes
Could be.
I'll know it when I don't like it.
Exactly.
Yep.
I'll know it when I don't like it. You know, it's like,
So it's like pornography.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Sure.
I know what I don't like when I see it. That's
right,
correct.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that
Pop ritual for president.
we're very diplomatic.
Well, so you guys are going to play at Mollie Fontaine's. I'm going to get this thing edited so that, you know, the proper amount of people will hear this. Maybe come down to Mollie Fontaine's on May 3rd.
May the 3rd,
Yes.
Saturday, May the 3rd.
Saturday, May the 3rd. What time?
I'm going to say that it's probably going to be 7 o'clock doors, 8 o'clock shows, what I'm thinking.
7
Won't be
o'clock
super
doors,
late.
8 o'clock show.
Yeah.
And Mollie Fontaine's is very atmospheric and perfect place
Oh, yeah,
for you
beautiful.
guys. You're going to be right up in everyone's business.
Yeah,
Yep.
very much in their business. Trying to get in everyone's business.
We'll know it when we like it.
Yeah, we'll
Hope so.
and Scott will be back.
Yeah,
Yes.
Scott will definitely be here. He'll be
There's
involved.
never going to be a fourth member.
Oh, I don't know. We've had fourth member before.
Really?
Yeah. There's
Surprise
been a little,
appearances.
Yeah, there's been a little rotating cast of members. Our good friend Aaron Rude, shout out to him. He does a project here in town called the Midnight Sound Service, which we love, adore his records. He has been a collaborative partner of mine for a long time, and has even played a little bit on some of the earlier records, and has joined us from time to time on stage.
Will he be there on...
Hopefully he'll be able to come and attend,
Yeah.
but he won't be performing with us that night.
I'm thankful that you guys are doing something like just different and fascinating,
thank
and it has layers to it, and it deserves to be talked about, and people need to know about it. And if people can listen to this and come out to see you guys, all the better. And I'm glad to have you on the podcast.
Well, it's been a pleasure being here.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
What do you want to go out on?
Yeah, why not? Yeah, maybe Dark Starts, the first song from the first record.
Dan O'Bannon's movie?
We're going to be... No, but yes. And we haven't played it in probably 4 or 5 years, but we're going to be playing it at the show.
And also keep rolling. So just real quick, I want to ask you, so columns, and so immediately what I thought of was the stupid thing that came out in the news. I don't know if it's real or fake. It's probably more fake than real, about the columns under the pyramids.
Oh, no, I've not heard of this.
You have not even heard of
No,
this?
but I have heard that those structures go deeper, quite a bit deeper into the ground than what we realize, that we really are just seeing kind of the tops of them.
Help me out here, Dennis.
Oh, I know
Are
you're
you
talking
talking
about.
about,
It has a terminology. I don't remember what it's called.
They've been used on the Amazon rainforest to show that the rainforest was completely planted by man.
Yeah.
With carbon-based burnt soil and stuff.
Yeah.
So I think they used that same technology, and now they've revealed that there's something under
A
the
deeper layer.
pyramids that are like columns,
Wild.
and they're using the word columns. So this
Wow.
might be like a good
Interesting.
time to release this record.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there you go.
it sounds right.
Maybe you
Sounds like
should
a good time.
Maybe you should like use that as a graphic, because they've really gone overboard with the AI rendering.
Just
So-
one word.
Hilarious that you...
Aliens.
Well, I'll tell you, it's funny that you mention that too, because the artwork. So the artwork for this record went through a few different stages. Just to be clear, my brother Jay Benjamin does all the visual artwork for the group mostly. Scott has done some visual design for some T-shirts and a lot of our flyer work and online posters and that kind of thing. But the album artwork, all of that has been reserved for my brother to work on. He's a great visual artist.
and his name is,
Jay Benjamin is,
and he's been
what
doing
he goes
stuff
by.
in Memphis.
He actually lives in Salt Lake City.
Okay.
But
Jay Benjamin,
yes,
has he played with you guys on a record or?
no, he's more in the visual arts world. He definitely has musical aptitude for sure. He grew up playing piano, but
No brotherly harmonies on the Pop Ritual.
No, I would love that. But
That would be crazy.
Well, that's a really cool album cover.
yeah, thank you.
Really good, great design.
I love the work that he's done for it, and I we landed on the right piece of work. But oftentimes when he is demoing the artwork, if you will, he goes through a lot of different phases. And so for the columns, there wound up being, I think, 6 or 7 different pieces that he was working on in unison until we dialed it into the right thing. And one of the pieces that he was working on was a pyramidal structure held up by the columns, and sitting below it was a conjoined skeleton of 3 different individuals that were conjoined as one skeleton, sitting in a throne below these columns. And
this is the guy that turned you on to ministry.
It turned me on to all the good stuff.
Conjoined skeletons.
We were initially going in that direction, and we thought that this would be visually something very different for us. We were going to make a hard turn. But then as we went on in the process, the other artwork emerged, and it felt more correct. It felt more at home and rightly suited to the release. And also there were some things that I wanted to do with the artwork to tie it back to the way that we had released the singles. And so for anyone listening, visually, when you look at the artwork of the album, you'll recognize what I'm talking about.
Well, that's cool, and I hope you have more vinyl records.
Yeah.
Real quick, I just want to ask you about your mom, and you said your mom taught you, Michelle, gave you piano lessons.
Yes.
Yeah.
You come from a musical family?
Yeah, everyone in my family plays music.
Your dad?
My dad, my mom. I grew up with them playing piano and singing in the house, and my brother grew up playing piano. Took piano lessons as a kid. But
what kind of stuff did your parents play around you?
A lot of Bette Midler. My mom, I can hear her singing. She loved "The Rose" by Bette Midler. It was like that was her song. I remember her playing that a lot as a kid on piano and singing.
Wait a minute, and that came out like before you were born?
Oh yeah,
like a year before you were born.
Probably,
or something.
Yeah.
But that was very present in my childhood.
That's sweet.
Yeah, it is. But a lot of gospel, honestly. A lot of religious music.
Yeah.
That's mostly what I heard growing up from them. Personally, I didn't play piano growing up. I sang a little bit in choir, church choirs, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then I started playing violin when I was 10. When I was about 10 years old.
You
Memphis City
definitely
Schools.
have some background here.
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit. Memphis City Schools offered an orchestral program at that time, and I went to I went to Balmoral Elementary when I first started playing violin, and was introduced into the strings program there, and then transferred over to Ridgeway Elementary School and continued in the strings program there. And then my mom got a small little house in Cordova when Cordova was kind of first developing. But they didn't offer, at that time, Memphis and Shelby County schools were separate entities, and they didn't offer a strings program out there. So that was the end of learning strings for me as a child.
Right.
And kind of ended music for me as a participant until I was, from 12 to 15, I didn't really do much other than, just be a fan and listen.
What kind of pop culture were you taking in at the time? Comics, movies?
Yeah, all of it.
Yeah.
All of it. Yeah, big comic book fan. It was hard for me to get into superhero comics too much. I went more of the off the beaten path sort of comics.
What do you mean?
Alan Moore, J. Obar.
Swamp Thing?
Yes, I definitely like Swamp Thing.
Watchmen?
Yeah, Watchmen, Swamp Thing, The Crow.
Frank
Sandman?
Miller?
I'm sorry.
Sandman.
Sandman, yeah, thank you. That's exactly what I was looking for.
Oh,
Neil
Sandman.
Gaiman and
Yeah,
Sandman.
yeah,
Love Sandman.
yeah.
That stuff really started to push on me. I loved the superhero stuff as a kid. My brother had gotten me into X-Men in '87.
Yeah.
So that was really, and that at that time felt very new.
Yeah.
In '87, X-Men felt very, very new to me, and it was very new to me. I'd known the big guys. I'd known Spider-Man and Captain America and Superman and Batman and all that since before I can even remember having memories. But
you had to go to comic book stores.
yeah. At that time, we were living in Millington in the early '80s, and we went to our favorite little spot called Comic Cavalcade.
Okay.
And
Millington had a comic book store?
Yeah, Comic Cavalcade. And my parents, I remember, my parents were quite religious at the time, and I remember being forbidden from going into the back room of this place because that's where they kept all the Dungeons and Dragons. And of course, this is the age of satanic panic and kids murdering their parents and,
Right.
this and that, allegedly from playing D&D and so forth.
Right.
My parents eventually had to turn around on that. My brother and I became really avid D&D kids for a while. And
Are your parents are still around?
yeah, they are. They're both still living.
What do they think about the pop ritual?
Not their thing, but they're very supportive. My parents have always, once they were always supportive of my creativity and artistic sort of drive. My mom, and I don't know that they get it, but I don't know that they're really supposed to, or that anybody is.
Do they maybe think that you've redefined what religious music means to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, my mom and I definitely have that understanding now.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah,
as it should be.
Yeah, for sure. She's very, very, like I said, she's very, very supportive, even in sort of not knowing, and maybe even sometimes being a little bit scared. She
scared of what?
I think just the intensity of it all.
Of the music?
Yeah, for sure. And the intensity of the feelings, the sort of emotions that it brings up in her.
Well, I feel the same way when I listen today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's good. But that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to feel something.
Well, no, I mean, when I'm listening to the columns, I like, and I'm going to interview you tonight, I want to have something smart to say about it, or something, sure. but more than that, personal.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. It's like we all want to relate to what our kids are doing, right. Whatever the hell they're doing. Let's hope they do something that you can relate to.
Without a doubt.
and evolves the notion that you raised them and so forth. So I'm sure she's very proud of you.
Yeah, and she likes the softer things. The
Softer things.
Yeah, if you look.
Is
back
that another
into,
album?
yeah, for sure. I mean, if you look back into the catalog, there's some softer tunes. On the first album, I never really saw myself as being able to write a love ballad. Like classic 70s rock albums have got all your heavy hitters, but then everything's got to have at least a ballad on there, right? Well, for me, when I was making that record, I felt the same need for peaks and valleys, and so instead of writing love songs, I used that opportunity to do some really gentle, atmospheric, ambient tunes that have no vocals and no defined rhythm and this kind of thing. And my mom loves that stuff.
Can we go out on one of those?
Absolutely.
What would you want to play?
We should play Tied to Wires and Rings.